Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of Grandmaster Games. And we continue the series with a game from another exciting contemporary player, Wesley So. The customary quote: "The beauty of chess is it can be whatever you want it to be. It transcends language, age, race, religion, politics, gender, and socio-economic background. Whatever your circumstances, anyone can enjoy a good fight to the death over the chessboard." And I agree with the English Grandmaster Simon Kim Williams on that one. Born in the Philippines, Wesley So is a Grandmaster, current World Fischer Random Chess Champion, and former chess prodigy. He gained the Grandmaster title at age 14, then becoming the youngest Grandmaster. Wesley learned moving chess pieces around the age of 6, and as a child used to challenge people in his neighborhood to play with him. He has won the Filipino Chess Championship 3 times and the US Chess Championship in 2017 after beating Alexander Onischuk in a rapid playoff. Wesley has also won the 2015 Bilbao Masters, 2016 Grand Chess Tour, and the 2017 Tata Steel Masters. He passed the 2800 ELO rating mark in 2017, becoming the 11th player to do so. In 2019, Wesley became the first official Fischer Random World Chess Champion after defeating Magnus Carlsen with a dominating 13.5 to 2.5 score. He represented the Philippines till 2014 and afterwards the United States. Rudolfo Tan Cardoso, who was a Filipino international master, said of Wesley's aggressive style of play as a youngster, "The young lad would sacrifice a queen or any other pieces in his arsenal to get a winning attack. He cannot afford decent training given by well-known grandmaster coaches and has to rely on his pure talent before competing." When asked in a recent interview regarding learning the game of chess while growing up, Wesley said, "I learned chess when I was 7 or 8. A lot of people played on every corner of the neighborhood I lived in. You see, chess is very popular in the Philippines because in third world countries, chess is the poor man's game. Rich people play tennis, polo and golf, while poor people play chess because you don't need anything. No uniform, no field or courts. Children don't need money to play chess. People make the pieces out of bottle caps or whatever materials they have. So every week I would cut out newspaper clippings about famous Grandmaster games, study them, and then I'd go from street to street with a makeshift board, challenging anyone who knew how to play." Now, the 8th Bilbao Masters final was held in Bilbao, Spain from 26th October to 1st November 2015. The tournament used Sofia chess rules, which forbid agreed draws before 30 moves. And the lineup for the final included Anish Giri of Netherlands, Wesley So of USA, Vishy Anand of India, and Ding Liren of China. And you can see a picture of them together in the video as well. Wesley won the event after tie-break games with Anish Giri. This was game 2 of the event in round 1. Wesley's opponent was Ding Liren, the Chinese Super GM, who is the highest rated Chinese chess player in history, the first Chinese player to pass the 2800 ELO mark, and he also held a 100-game unbeaten streak, the longest in top-level chess history, until Magnus Carlsen surpassed it in 2019. So without further ado, let's get into the moves of the game. Wesley So with the white pieces and Ding Liren with the black. And Wesley began the game with d4 and Ding responded knight f6, c4, g6, and with knight c3 we have the King's Indian defense, an opening which was considered dubious until the mid-1930s, but later gained more respect and popularity through the analysis and play of certain Soviet players, including Alexander Konstantinopolsky, Isaac Boleslavsky, pardon my pronunciation, and David Bronstein. The King's Indian is a hypermodern opening where black deliberately allows white control of the center with pawns, with the aim of challenging it later with moves such as e5 or c5. Instead of knight c3, white can play knight f3, where the game can transition to the fianchetto variation of the King's Indian after bishop g7, g3, castling, bishop g2, d6, and castling, a line which is quite popular at grandmaster level. Black can respond with knight d7 here, preparing a later e5 pawn push. Or it can also go for knight c6, where play can continue with knight c3, a6, d5, knight a5, a rare case where the black knight is fine on the rim here, adding pressure to c4. Knight d2, c5, queen c2, rook b8, b3, b5, bishop b2, b takes on c4, b takes on c4, bishop h6, and f4, a position which has been reached in many master level games. Also, before f4, a common trap for white worth noting here is e3 because of bishop f5, where white is going to lose material after e4 being the best move. Bishop takes on d2, e takes on f5, and knight takes on c4. But knight c3 was played by Wesley in the game. And Ding continued with the book move bishop g7, where instead d5 leads to the Gruenfeld defense, another respected and popular opening for black. But bishop g7 by Ding continuing along the King's Indian line, e4 and d6, where white has a few options to go for, one of them being f3, the Samish variation, named after Friedrich Samish, a German grandmaster who developed the system in the 1920s. And black has a variety of pawn breaks here, such as e5, c5, and even b5, which can be prepared by either a6 or c6. And world champions Mikhail Botvinnik, Mikhail Tal, Tigran Petrosian, Boris Spassky, Anatoly Karpov and Garry Kasparov have all played the Samish variation of the King's Indian. Play continues with castling and bishop e3, where e5 is the classical defense to the Samish, and Kasparov was a major advocate of this defense. Here white can play either d5 or knight a2, maintaining the tension in the center. Alternatively, c5 is the Samish gambit by black. White can accept the gambit with d takes on c5, d takes on c5, queen takes on d8, rook takes on d8, bishop takes on c5 and knight c6, where black's activity here is believed to give sufficient compensation. White can also decline the gambit with knight a2. Another line is knight c6, where we have knight a2, a6, queen d2 and rook b8, known as the Pano variation of the Samish. A sample continuation here is bishop h6, b5, h4, e5, bishop takes on g7 and king takes on g7, from a game between Vladimir Bagirov versus Edward Gufeld, played in 1973. Though white had the initiative with over a pawn's worth of advantage here, Edward went on to win as black in dramatic style, which is remembered as a brilliancy of his and one of the most famous King's Indian games. After d6 by black, white can also continue with bishop e2, castling, and bishop g5, which is the Auerbach variation of the King's Indian defense, named after Yuri Auerbach, a Russian grandmaster. And here e5 would be a mistake by black because of d takes on e5, d takes on e5, queen takes on d8, rook takes on d8 and knight d5, where knight takes on d5 is best for black here. But now comes bishop takes on d8, winning the exchange for white and a much better position. As such, either c5 or knight a6 here are playable moves for black in the Auerbach variation. Another move for white in this position is f4, the 4 pawns attack, where play continues with castling and knight f3. White gets a massive center, although at the cost of falling behind in development. This is the most aggressive method for white in the King's Indian defense and was seen often during the 1920s. Black can go with knight a6 here, which is the modern variation in the 4 pawns attack. c5 is the main line, however, with d5, e6, bishop a2, e takes on d5, and c takes on d5. And here black can proceed with bishop g4 or rook e8 or b5, which is known to lead to sharp and dangerous play. Bishop takes on b5 here gives black the initiative after knight takes on e4. Knight takes on e4 and queen a5 check. But in the game, Wesley continued along the classical line with knight f3, castling by Ding, bishop a2 and e5, which is the classical variation of the King's Indian defense. Play continued in the main line or Mar del Plata variation with castling and knight c6, where it should be noted that knight d7 instead by black is the old main line in the classical variation of the King's Indian defense and is playable but less common in modern times. So knight c6 by Ding and d5 by Wesley attacking the knight. As such, knight e7. Now knight e1 by white. Also playable for white here is knight d2 or b4, which is the bayonet attack introduced by Victor Korchnoi in the 1970s. But knight e1 by Wesley and now knight d7 by black, preparing the f5 pawn thrust. And in this position, black typically attacks on the king side, whereas white does the same from the queen side. Play continued with bishop e3, f5, f3, f4, bishop f2, g5, rook c1, knight g6, and here Wesley went for the pawn break c5, and Ding responded with knight takes on c5. D takes on c5 here gives white the advantage. White can continue now with b4, and if black does some more pawn grabbing with c takes on b4, then comes knight b5 with almost 3 pawns of advantage to white here. As such, knight takes on c5 by black and now b4 by Wesley attacking the knight, which goes to a passive knight a6. Knight d3 rerouting the knight over to the queen side and defending the b4 pawn. And Ding continued his pawn storm on the king side here with h5. Knight b5 by Wesley, threatening to take the pawn on a7, which is attacked twice. As such, b6 by black. Bishop e1 by white, rerouting the bishop since it was getting dominated by black pawns along this diagonal. Rook f7, where the rook can move around on black's second rank, targeting any open files later in the game. Bishop d2, bishop f6 and knight f2, adding some extra protection to the g4 square. Queen e8, eyeing the knight on b5. Queen a4, bishop d8. Queen a3 and g4 by Ding, going for a pawn break. F takes on g4, h takes on g4 and knight c3. And you can't take the g4 pawn here as white with the bishop takes on g4. Otherwise, you drop the knight to queen takes on b5. As such, knight c3 by Wesley, and now a piece sacrifice with knight takes on b4 by Ding. The move recommended by Stockfish here is knight b8 instead, but it does not do much for black since the knight is very passive there. As such, Ding chose a more active line, gaining a tempo with a positional piece sacrifice. Also noteworthy is that the attractive g3 here does not work for black after h takes on g3, f takes on g3 and knight h1 with over 2 pawns of advantage to white. So knight takes on b4, queen takes on b4 and f3, attacking white's thin pawn structure on the king side as well as the bishop. As such, bishop f5 by Wesley. G takes on f3 here is bad for white since it exposes the king dangerously after g takes on f3, opening the g file, and if bishop b5 now, then queen e7 with almost 3 pawns of advantage to black. So instead, bishop f5, queen e7 and g3, Wesley rightly keeping files closed around the white king. Rook h7, pressuring h2, and queen c4 by white, looking for play in the light squares on the queen side combined with the light bishop. Rook h8, queen c6, attacking the a8 rook. But now queen h7 by Ding, threatening an immediate mate on h2. But thanks to the f2 knight, white has the resource h3 here. So rook b8, moving the rook away from the threat. Knight d1 and a6, where Wesley found the best move here with queen e8 check, which keeps the initiative going for white. Bishop d3 instead is not so good for white after bishop d7, where white's initiative on the queen side is cut short. So queen e8 check by Wesley and king g7. Alright, you can pause the video here to find the best move for white. Queen takes on d8 is the only good move for white here, allowing the queen to fall after rook takes on d8. But now comes rook takes on c7 check, which was the point of sacrificing the queen for the bishop guarding black's c7 pawn. Bishop d7 blocking the check, and with rook takes on d7 check, white gets 3 minor pieces for the queen. Rook takes on d7, bishop takes on d7, g takes on h3 and king h2, where the king is safe as a house, cozying up under an enemy pawn. Rook b7 by Ding, which is an inaccuracy, giving white an edge of over 3 pawns. King h8 is recommended by Stockfish, which keeps white's edge to around 2 pawns. But Rook b7 by Black and Bishop e6 by Wesley, retreating the bishop slightly. Knight f8, Bishop f5, Queen h5 and Knight g4, where Knight e3 is also playable for white. But Knight g4 by Wesley and Knight d7 by Ding, which was a mistake, and better was Rook f7 instead, which keeps white's initiative to a minimum. But with Knight d7, white gets over 5 pawns of advantage, and once again Wesley found the best move here with Bishop h6 check, King h8, Knight e3, Rook c7 and Bishop takes on d7, which was inaccurate by Wesley as it reduces white's advantage. Better was Bishop e6 followed by Knight f6, where white keeps an advantage of almost 5 pawns. But Bishop takes on d7, so now Rook takes on d7, Rook takes on f3, opening the f file, Rook f7 by Ding, challenging the white rook, but Rook f5 by Wesley, forcing Black to capture with Rook takes on f5. If Queen g6 instead, then comes Bishop f8, and if Rook takes on f5 now, then E takes on f5, where Black's d pawn will fall after the queen moves, and the 2 knights along with the pointy thing will continue the party for white. As such, Rook takes on f5, E takes on f5, Queen f7, Bishop g5, and here Ding blundered with b5. Queen f8 or King h7 offers the most resistance, although it's still winning for white after that. But with 3 minor pieces against the queen, Black could at least hope a little for a mistake in calculation from his opponent, as unlikely as that may be. But b5 was played in the game by Ding, giving white a winning advantage of almost 9 pawns. And Wesley continued with the best move here, Knight h6, attacking the queen. Queen f8, f6 and King h7, but it's too late for Black now. Knight f5 by Wesley, and it should be noted that Knight g4 here would be a bad blunder by white and leads to a draw after King g6, Bishop d2, Queen a8, f7. Queen takes on d5, King takes on h3, Queen h1 check, Knight h2, King g7, Bishop b4, Queen c1, Knight g4, Queen h1 check, and Knight h2, where Black gets in a 3-fold repetition. As such, Knight f5, King g6, Bishop h4, e4, f7, e3, Bishop e7 and e2, which is another mistake by Ding, and Queen takes on f7, sacking the queen for white's passed pawn instead is better. But at this point it doesn't really matter because black is getting crushed either way. So e2 and knight h4 check. King h7, bishop takes on f8, e1 queen. But now bishop takes on d6 with a little over 70 pawns of advantage to white. Ding played on here for a bit with queen f2 check. King takes on h3, queen f1 check. King g4, queen c4 check. Bishop f4, queen e2 check. But after knight f3, Ding resigned. A sample continuation here can be king g7, bishop e5 check, king f8 and bishop d6 check with mate to follow soon. So there we go, an exciting game by Wesley So against a strong opponent featuring a queen sacrifice and play with 3 minor pieces against the black queen in the endgame. Shout out to Securely for gifting 5 subscriptions to viewers on my Twitch stream last week. Karma Dumpster with 1 gifted subscription. R. Ravi continuing his subscription. Karma Dumpster, who was also the top chairer with 2800 bits last week. Jacob G99 at second with 725 bits. And an anonymous chairer, a mystery chairer, at third with 354 bits. And Brainspew at 4th with 100 bits last week. Thanks a lot for the kind support everyone, much appreciated. Alright, till next time, take care.